aquatic biologist, and I want to tell you a little bit quickly of what I do, just to show you that there's so many things to do in biology that you probably wouldn't think of. And I've got one of those jobs where you probably would not, like no one here has this idea of what they want to do with what I'm doing. So I got a degree in fisheries early on. I was really interested in working with fish, but I took a course in algae during that time. I became just enamored with algae, and not only just algae, but a specific kind of algae, diatoms. So we can go to the next one if you want to click over. So yeah, so I work with a type of algae that makes these little glass shells. So this is just the glass. They look like little living snowflakes. You could put, if these were bigger, these are only like 5 microns across. But if they're bigger, you can put them on your Christmas tree, and they look really quite cool. Anyway. I just became enamored with these, and I'm kind of an expert on their taxonomy now, and I teach that, and I work for the DNR, or I've worked for Indian tribes and the EPA and Great Lakes associations to help figure out what's going on in different environments based on these diatoms. Because each diatom, there's thousands of species, and each one of them has a specific requirement. Each one has an optimal pH and an optimal temperature, and doesn't like metals or likes metals, or so. And so the nice thing about this algae too is because it has these hard parts, these little glass parts, they last forever. So they create little microfossils. So I can go and I can take a plankton net and look at what's happening in the lake today and give you kind of a guess on what's going on. Like the lake is this pH, and it doesn't have a lot of nutrients right now. But I can also go in the middle of the lake and take a tube of mud out of the lake, cut it up, and section that mud, and go down, and we can date, using carbon-14 and other things, we can date that mud going back. So currently I'm reconstructing the history right now of Lake Ontario, one of the Great Lakes, using diatom microfossils, and we can see where humans first entered the area and started clearing the area. There's a shift in populations towards more diatoms that like more nutrients, and since the Clean Water Act, there's a shift back, and we can see when they quit using leaded gas and that. So we can reconstruct all sorts of things. So I'm also on another project looking at climate change, because we can see what using these, we can go back in time to see what the flora, diatom flora used to look like, and make a guess of what that environment was like, and what's it doing today. So if we had more rains, for instance, or drier, warmer conditions, it's reflected in how these change. So that's what I do, and there's probably about 50 people in the United States that do something similar, and we all know each other, and we're all, it's kind of it's a nice group. But you wouldn't necessarily think of that as a career in biology, but I love it. I love working with these things. I like going out in the field and doing studies on them, and answering big questions with very little things. But what else? So the rest of the talk is what else you can do. So if we could have the next slide. So you can do a lot of research and development. You might just be like, I like answering questions and always learning things as I go. And in that case, you can do research and development. So you can work for industry and labs, or the public health departments, federal and state governments, for instance, like the EPA or the DNR. We've got a number of students that have gone this route. Center for Disease Control, Department of Agriculture, Armed Services. They employ a lot of biologists to figure out what's going on. So a lot of the Armed Services have a lot of land, and they need stewards, and they need to know how to protect it. Or if certain agents are applying for the land, so how they can do things in an environmentally more friendly way. Let's put it that way. And of course, colleges and universities, and that would be something like I do. I teach half the time, and I do research half the time. So I feel like I've got the best of both worlds, and I love that position. How about the next slide? We have some other avenues you could take this would be in healthcare. So a lot of our students go on into the nursing profession, and I would make an argument, if you're going into medicine, you need to know some basics about biology, and most of our students start off with a biology degree
and go on into different aspects of medicine or dentistry or pharmacy or even veterinary medicine. You need a biology degree first to start to approach that. So next on this, also biomedical sciences, where this is developing and studying new chemicals and the effect of these chemicals on people and other organisms. So biochemistry, cellular and molecular biology, genetics. This is a big field that we're learning new stuff in all the time. Immunology, infectious diseases. These are all got so far a lot of pictures of people looking at microscopes. That's what I was able to find on this. But yes, next. Oh, and this is kind of my category. I've already said what I've done. So within this, you can specialize in botany or ecology or conservation biology. So how to save the bits of environment we've got left. Marine biology. You can do a lot of ship time, or a lot of if you like hanging out around the ocean. Entomology, working with insects, either as pest control or studying their ecology. Zoology, working with other animals. What can you do with this? You work for zoos and aquariums. I've got a former student that works down in Disney World, now working with all their primates and other animals. Fish hatcheries. If you like fish, these are great jobs. Wildlife preserves and parks, or nature centers, or museums even. Next for this, biotechnology. You can go into this, developing new methods for growing food, or growing and developing new food, or testing new food products through food science. Biological engineering, so manipulating genes to make better products, arguably. Biological engineering, I've got that twice, and environmental regulation, so there you go with that. Next, bioinformatics. So you need this is if you like biology, but also like working with computers or a tremendous amount of data. We're kind of in the age now where computers are pretty cheap, and we've got a history of a lot of good data. And we're just starting to learn what to do with all this data and look for meta patterns in it. So it's a really interesting field, and there's a growing demand because we don't know what to do with all this tremendous amount of data, how to categorize it, and new ways to analyze it. So next, and so education. Again, you can be a biologist in an elementary school or high school, universities, educational director at zoos or nature centers or parks, and after that, we've got communications. There's lots of companies or organizations that need people to communicate well with biology. So technical writing. I've got people that work for instance, students that work for the National Geographic channel right now, helping them write things, illustrating, photography, public relations, science magazines and newspapers, even writing textbooks. Next, almost done here. Environmental law. So you get a degree in biology, and to effectively, if you're interested in changing things at a very basic level, like changing the laws of the land, it helps if you know the biology behind it, and this is often the first step. So science policy, patent law, nonprofit public interest or nonprofit public interest groups or law firms. Not my cup of tea, but I've got some friends that really like this. And next, I think, this might be it. Okay, yeah. So I try to show you as broad of as many broad opportunities as I could kind of come up with. And so I'm more in the organismal group, but yes.
So when the other professor came, she talked about kinesiology, and the patterns are very straightforward. Like if you go into a career, that's where you end up. So would you say, like in biology, that it's kind of an open book to where you kind of your interests?
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong. I don't need to bash kinesiology. I just, if you have a passion for biology, like I've always known I wanted to be a biologist. I had my little microscope when I was 5, and I was looking at pond water and algae even then. And to find that I could I learned that I could get paid for this. That was it. I just wanted to be a biologist and just study life. So I mean, we are alive. So anything you can think of, just anything that anything that humans are interested in, there's this living component to it, like, you know, that gets wrapped around it. And we've either got to convey information or live in the environment that we're in, or, you know, help new medical treatments. You all need a good understanding of biology. So I feel it's one of the basic sciences, and there's a lot of jumping off places. And there's so many new things in science that we need people to convey that information, even in like even in like large corporations will often need a biologist to help understand what's going on and what they're doing with their own products. So I've had friends that work with like Procter and Gamble, and they work on testing every new soap product or something that comes out. They test it in these artificial streams to see if, you know, they're safe or not. And they need a good biologist to do that sort of stuff. Yeah. So any other questions? So I kind of bombarded you with all that stuff, but yes.
So if you were gonna do like for example, like the law kind of route, would you still get like a full biology major and then have to go to law school?
Yeah, so a lot of these opportunities, so the advantage of kinesiology might be that you could just get a 4-year degree and you're done. And a lot of these avenues, you can get a 4-year degree in biology and you're done. But for law, you would need a biology degree under your belt first and then go into law school. And most people don't go into law school without some degree first. So that would be one avenue to go to. So, you know, like a good friend of mine has been the water rights lawyer for the Navajo Nation down in New Mexico, and so he's established all these water laws, and I've worked with some Indian tribes as well, which is another untapped potential as a biologist. So helping them, you know, with their resources, and you know, it's a really interesting position because you really feel like you're making a huge difference. Because if you say something like don't harvest wild rice yet, or don't, you just leave this area alone for a while, people listen to you, and often there's a lot of jobs where you can work for a big government agency and write a 1,000-page report, and then no one will read it, you know, and you feel like, well, why am I? So there's things you can do that you can have some immediate impacts on as well, and that was a very rewarding thing to do for a while. Anything else? So I assume that you guys have got at least a little bit of interest since you're in a CAP class. So, and I think it's just naturally, it's very natural to be interested in biology because, you know, it gets at the basic question of why are we alive, and why are other things alive, and what does that, you know, what does it mean, and what is this process, and the more you study life, I think it's just the more amazing it is. So I never tired of learning things about it. So it's always been really easy for me, a really easy thing to go into because it's just so fascinating, and it's what we are and who we are and what we're connected to. So yeah.
So a lot of these guys next year at this time will be in a state school or one of the school, like a private school, or what would be some of the introductory level, kind of freshman level biology classes that they might encounter or have optioned on taking, like at UW-Oshkosh?
The first, well, I teach one of them. There's a series called Organismal Biology or Diversity, and I teach the diversity section of it, where for a semester we go through we get kind of so the first section, 105, Biology 105, teaches what's the unity of life, what all life has in common, you know, kind of at a molecular level. We all are made of cells. How do those cells work? You know, kind of just more kind of cellular things, respiration, photosynthesis, things that most life have in common. And then I take the next class, 106, and talk about how different branches of life are really different. So I start to look at the differences, and we go through all the living phyla on Earth. So we look at, you know, bacteria and protists, fungi, plants and animals, and the divisions within that. And I really like it. We get really good student reviews on it. It's kind of a tough course because we cover a lot of material, but the people that stick with it always give it a really high reviews, and I really like the way it's put together. We've been teaching it for a long time now, and it has a nice rhythm to it. In the lab, we take a look at a lot of, we get to do a lot of different things in lab. Yes?
In most of your classes, is it like field work, or is it mostly like lectures, or what kind of style is most of these done?
It's harder with the the first introductory classes is hard to get, because they're so big, it's hard to get people out in the field. We take little trips around campus or something. But by the time you're a sophomore, junior, or senior, you can take classes like, I'll teach limnology. Does anyone know what limnology is? No? It's this, what?
Study of limbs.
No, that's what someone thought. There's a weird story associated with that I won't go into, but it's a study of freshwater systems, so lakes and rivers and streams. So yeah, that's what I would have thought too. So we go out, we'll take an overnight up to the Trout Lake Biological Station, or we'll canoe around the Chain of Lakes area to sample all the lakes, and then use that to why is one lake? I mean, all of these lakes are just bodies of water that have been sitting there for a while. So why is one lake so different than another lake? Why does it have different plankton? Why does it have different plants around it? Why does it have more nutrients or less nutrients? And what are the changes it causes? So it's kind of there's a lot of manager aspects to it, and yeah. So we have a lot of field courses where we get out. Other classes work with terrestrial animals that they go out to a nearby nature preserve almost every week until it gets too cold to look at patterns in foraging and competition. So they learn about the theory of this stuff in the lecture, and then go out and test some of these theories and ideas out in the real world. So it's a nice mix of things. So yeah, we've got a pretty good dynamic ecology department that likes to get out and do things. And there's opportunities in everyone's lab to do some work if you want to get more involved, to get involved in someone else's research. So that's always a nice thing to do. It's a good way to test and see if this is what you really like too. So we've got a student of mine is working in another lab, looking at trying to chart past fires. We're going to do we're going to look at the algae distribution, but also look at the carbon around the Peshtigo area in Wisconsin that had the big fire. We're going to try and map when that fire happened, but also go back in time, back to the glaciers to see how often fires happened before that, and get kind of a feel for. The other thing you can do with these cores of mud from lakes is you can figure out what the surrounding landscape was like by looking at the types of pollen that have settled down there. So we can look at 1,000-year-old pollen and know when the pines and spruce were dominant in the area, or where people settled. Because if you clear an area out, suddenly you see a bunch of ragweed pollen show up, because that's a weed that shows up as soon as you start clearing the area. So we know that's when kind of European settlement hit the area, or we know when logging hit the area when we see a layer of sawdust that there was a mill on the lake and so on. So there's all sorts of, yeah. So I'm more on the aquatic side of things, but we've got a good terrestrial team too. So, yes.
So, like looking at students and the ones that are successful at UW-Oshkosh, are there things that they can do here beyond like taking this environmental science class that you've seen other students that kind of help them to kind of get a nose up or?
And before they get there?
Yeah.
Just reading, develop your own interest. And I was a real geek about science, so I was reading science books. I had if you could get a summer summer job or just volunteering sometime. I mean, that's not necessary to succeed at Oshkosh or any other campus, but it is necessary to establish, to get the career you eventually want. The more involved you are, and the earlier you're involved in just activities that, and hopefully it's something you like volunteering with the DNR. Sometimes they've got programs to help, or doing citizen watch things, or just getting involved in a conservation group, or that helps you explore what you want to do before you're forced to pick a profession somewhere. And that way you can decide if you really like it or not. If you work with someone that's working in agriculture and is collecting bugs like the emerald ash beetle or something around here, if you like that and get really excited about it and have a great time, great. That's something you might want to go into. And if you don't like it, then at least you can cross it off your list and go, I don't want to do this, then I'll try something else. But at least you kind of know. And I think taking charge of your own education, I mean, you're going to be asked this more and more about what you want to do. And I've got a son right now as a senior, and he doesn't really have a clue, and a lot of his peers are like that too. So I've been watching this firsthand, and it's kind of painful. The more you can get involved and try different things, there's going to be something that you get really excited about, and that would be a good direction to go in, rather than maybe just haphazardly stumbling on something because someone offered you a position, and you might like it and you might not, but I would hate to have a career based on just a random chance. You might want to just try a few things, and hopefully they're fun. I mean, that's the whole point. Fun or rewarding, if not fun, and something that you wouldn't mind doing. Or talk to people in professions that you think are neat, and see how happy they are. If they're really cynical and not very happy about their professions, find out why, or make this short. Just finish, or try to find, take charge of your own kind of career and what you'd like to do. And there's so many interesting avenues. I try to point to a wealth of them here. You don't think necessarily that you could be a biologist for a Native American organization, or work necessarily for a small nature park somewhere, or or Disneyland, or and they need people that are you could work for the botanist at San Diego Zoo, or at I've got another person. So I've got a person in Hawaii now that's working with biofuels, algae, and trying to figure out the next new biofuel. There's a big startup corporation that he's working with. Another person is working down with Sargento cheese, monitoring the cheese cultures and making sure that the right mold is getting there. And there's all of these interesting, potentially really interesting jobs for people if that interests you. So you need to find out what really sparks your interest and what you want to do. And if you're good at it, you can get a job.